Hi there, my name's Maria Paula McGurk, and this is a video recording of my presentation for my oral defense. I've made this recording for two audiences. The first is PhD candidates, so that they can get an example of what the presentation component of the oral defense is. I couldn't find any online from South Africa, and I think it's sometimes nice to have examples from your context. The oral defense for the Johannesburg Business School, you have 20 minutes for a presentation, and then they have up to an hour to ask any questions they'd like, and they are the reviewers who reviewed your thesis. The second audience is people who might be interested in this topic: creative economy, growing the creative economy, systems thinking within this context, and then the city of Johannesburg. Thesis for PhD is very detailed and very comprehensive. Mine is over 400 pages, and it can be a bit much. Very few people are going to read a full PhD thesis of somebody else. So this offers insights into what the different components were, so that you can maybe just read or connect with the specific research that interests you or is related to what you're looking for. I will be making a whole range of blogs and hopefully workshops and articles on this PhD. I really don't want it to sit in academic shelves, digital or physical somewhere, and not be used. That's not why I did this research. I did it with the hope that it will be a catalyst and contribute to knowledge within the city of Johannesburg and the cultural and creative industries. My supervisor was Professor Natanya Meyer. She was incredible, and a huge thank you to her for allowing me to move at the pace that worked for me, for giving me the confidence to experiment and explore ideas that I wasn't completely certain of. She was an incredible supervisor. And for anyone undertaking a PhD, having a good supervisor that you gel with is a critical component. So let's get going. It'll be about 20 minutes, probably a little bit over, but I'm going to try to keep within that time frame. So my theme was a systems thinking approach to the growth of the creative economy of Johannesburg. So firstly, why the creative economy? The creative economy contributes 3% towards the GDP of South Africa, which is equivalent or very similar to what agriculture contributes. It also has about 1 million employees, and there are opportunities for increasing that, or 1 million people work within the industry. Gauteng province contributes just under half of that towards the GDP, and the city of Johannesburg has the most established creative economy in South Africa, with the majority of creative businesses being based there. It also is starting to be recognized by a variety of departments because of its potential SMME development and tourism and investments. So it's an area that lots of departments within South Africa are starting to consider, as well as globally. The trend can be seen around the world. The issue is that there is little to no research on strategic growth and development of this industry within the context of South Africa, and in particular within the context of the city of Johannesburg. So the creative economy is made up, according to UNESCO's framework of cultural statistics, 6 cultural domains, and then they have a range of subsectors. This framework is used throughout my thesis, and it's used to explain what I mean by the cultural and creative industries. As you can see on your screen, it includes the traditional idea of arts and culture, like music, crafts, visual arts, as well as fields that are really growing exponentially in the fourth industrial revolution or the 21st century, which is audio, gaming, and creative services. Why a systems thinking approach? I knew for sure that I wanted to do my PhD on the cultural and creative industries, but I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with in relation to that within the city of Johannesburg. And when I started learning about the systems thinking, it just gelled so much with my intentions and the idea that silo thinking, linear thinking, simple problem solving isn't going to work for such a dynamic and complex industry like the CCIs. So this way of problem solving and acknowledging the complexity of a problem and seeing the wood and the trees really appealed for me as a strategic approach to looking at this industry. Alongside that, systems thinking approach complements the nature of work within the cultural and creative industries, which is essentially a distributed network. It's a way of work that we're starting to see more and more in the fourth industrial revolution, and it works differently to a centralized network. A centralized network, a simple example is how governments work, or how when the first industrial revolution took place, large factories would work with a hierarchy. That's where the term climbing the ladder comes from, that you have the person at the bottom step and then you work your way up in the organization to the top position, which is usually the CEO. The cultural and creative industries just don't work like that. There is no hierarchy. There is nodal points of connection that are continually moving and changing. A visual representation of this would be the way that the internet or the web works, with points of connection when there's mutual benefit, and then disconnection as necessary. So for the first time, the cultural and creative industries' natural way of working is starting to be explored and seen across many industries, because it aligns so much with what's happening in the fourth industrial revolution. And this works very strongly with a systems thinking approach of seeing the interconnections and the patterns in how things are functioning. My literature review, there were 5 topics that I looked at: the creative economy, sustainable development goals and their relationship to the creative economy, local economic development, specifically emphasizing creative cities and the use of the cultural and creative industries in local economic development, Gauteng province and the city of Johannesburg, and then finally, of course, systems thinking. On your screen, you can see what the research problem is. In essence, what the problem is there appears to be a disconnect between acknowledging the potential of the cultural and creative industries and practical implementation of how to realize that potential. It's one thing to understand that something could be beneficial. It's another thing to start strategically putting in place ways of realizing that. The industry is often misunderstood, overlooked and simplified with silo thinking. So internally, there's a better understanding of what the cultural and creative industries are, but externally, from industry, government and corporates who are trying to work with this industry, there often is a misunderstanding of what's actually happening and how it works. So the purpose of the study is what the title is: the creative systems thinking approach to the growth of the creative economy of Johannesburg. My research methodology, I followed a social constructivist approach, which was my philosophical paradigm, with inductive reasoning, mixed method, which I'll speak to further just now, and a convergent design. There were 2 case studies, 1 questionnaire and 1 mapping study in the primary research. It was cross-sectional, and then there was data collection and analysis. The primary research was qualitative and quantitative. I wanted to understand the city of Johannesburg from a variety of perspectives, from close up and from far away. So the qualitative primary research allowed for me to really go into depth into 2 case studies. The first case study looks at Contrafair, which is in essence an open studio event. An open studio event is when a creative hub or a range of small studios that are in the same location open up and people can come into the artist's studios. Contrafair is a very exciting model because it connected a variety of creative hubs in the city of Johannesburg to one another to open up over one weekend. So definitely seeing that systems thinking as an approach is already being done in different projects in the inner city, and Contrafair is one example of that. The second was looking at the role of art and design institutions in growing and developing creative entrepreneurship, and seeing what they are currently doing and what other components could they contribute within the city of Joburg. The quantitative survey was trying to get a bit more of a broader perspective of how cultural and creative practitioners perceive the inner city of Johannesburg, well, not the inner city, how they perceive the creative economy of the city of Johannesburg. There were three metrics which I used. The 8 main factors, which was it's called the performance measures and metrics for the creative economy, the 20-item systems thinking scale, and then entrepreneurship orientation. So I had 4 secondary objectives. Objectives 1, 2, and 3 all fed into number 4. The first was to complete a comprehensive mapping study of all the creative organizations that are enabling the cultural and creative industries. It was open source with the intention that cultural and creative practitioners could contribute to organizations that they believe are enabling creatives. The second was how creative practitioners perceive the inner city and its growth, which was a survey. The third was the case studies, on the ground perspectives within the context. And then the last one was bringing together points 1, 2, and 3, using systems thinking and trying to develop visual frameworks that could be utilized when strategizing growing the industries. So the findings and recommendations are broken into 2 components. The first component is looking at objectives 1, 2, and 3 and the findings from each of those. And then the final larger findings and recommendations is bringing together those 3 primary components, as well as the literature review, bringing it all together in a systems thinking approach. So there's 2 sets of findings and recommendations. These are very, very high level findings from objectives 1, 2, and 3. The first is that there are, according to the mapping study, 179 enabling organizations in the inner city. The mapping study went live, was live for about a year before I submitted my thesis, and there were about 12,000, now it's a bit more, but 12,000 views. I'm hoping that stays live and people continually contribute it, so there is a place for people to see what organizations are offering services to the industry. The second finding was case study 1, which was the Contrafair event, which really showed how systems thinking works in action and how it is already being used within this space. The third was the case study with tertiary institutions, and in essence, some of the recommendations from that was that tertiary institutions, their role is not simply to educate art and design students and introducing entrepreneurship training into them, which is highly recommended. But their role is much broader than that, and they sit in a position to have the potential to play a role in bringing together key stakeholders, being government, industry specialists, and then civil society, which is cultural and creative practitioners, in order to strategize ways forward. So they have a role, they have the potential to be a convener between key stakeholders. They also have the potential of really having a positive impact on creative entrepreneurs who have not gone to university, and partnering creative entrepreneurs and their students with one another for mutually beneficial education to both groups. The fourth was insights from CCI practitioners, revealed terminological and domain overlays. In the survey, creatives were asked which of the 6 domains they work in, and a very high percentage stated more than one, showing that creatives don't work in silos. They already are working across domains. So when a municipality or a government is strategizing the growth of a specific domain, they might be missing out on opportunities of how interrelated the different sectors, the different domains and subsectors are within the CCIs. The second is terminological insights, and this was, I'll give one example. Cultural and creative practitioners although a majority of them are working for themselves in one form or another, they often do not see themselves as entrepreneurs. They see themselves as freelancers, as self-employed, as gig workers, as part-time workers. They don't use the term entrepreneur as widely as you would think. And this is very important to know if you do not come from these industries, because you might think that there is low entrepreneurial spirit and engagement, when actually in the micro and SMME context of entrepreneurship, there are a lot of key players. They're just not calling themselves that. Finding 5 was the systems thinking, and trying to get a sense of, are practitioners in the city of Johannesburg systems thinkers, and are they entrepreneurially orientated? It seems crazy to bring in an approach if it doesn't work and align with the industry already. And it turns out that creatives of the city of Johannesburg are systems thinkers, and they are entrepreneurially orientated. The 6th finding was that practitioners see the city of Johannesburg as unsuccessful for the creative and cultural industries in 6 of the 8 categories. Only 2 categories had a mixed result of successful and unsuccessful. The final finding was proposed adjustments to 2 of the metrics, entrepreneurial orientation and the 8 factors for success, working within the cultural and creative industries and working within the South African context. So the final objective was to develop a systems thinking visual framework that proposes a way forward for the industry's complexity. First recommendation was having a better understanding of who the stakeholders are. When you're working within a distributed network, it is not 3 people sitting around a boardroom making decisions for the industry. There are multiple stakeholders, and they all have to be brought into the conversation if you want to move somewhere. But who are these stakeholders? And my first step was to take all the information from objectives 1, 2, and 3, and all the stakeholders who are mentioned by people I interviewed, by the survey, within the case studies, within the mapping study, putting all of those together to see who your initial stakeholders are. And that's what this table is. The recommendation here is that the responsibility for the growth of the CCIs is shared, not singular. It requires collaboration from multiple stakeholders, each adding unique perspectives and strengths for the growth of the industry. It is not the responsibility of governments to fix this industry or to grow this industry. It would never work. It cannot be done by one entity. It has to be done by a shared sense of responsibility, because that's the nature of how this industry functions. The second recommendation is bold, collaborative, and transformative leadership. I'm going to read this quote because I find it very, very important, by Tardif. The most successful creative economy movements have started with a disruptive leader. Disruptive leaders possess a deep understanding of the non-obvious, developing solutions with a heightened creativity, solving problems and addressing risks, finding the right trade-offs, and essentially recognizing the wicked opportunities in the wicked problems. These disruptive leaders can scan the environment, identify trends, and envision the future. These leaders come from 3 areas: governments, tertiary institutions, and within the industry. According to the survey, practitioners think that government leadership is currently unsuccessful within Johannesburg. They had mixed results with tertiary institutions, mixed results with CCI, but CCI did do better than tertiary institutions. The issue here is that they all have to be working well with each other in order for a successful creative economy. Another key component, again linked to a distributed network, is it's easy to know who the leaders are in government and tertiary institutions. It's a bit more tricky within the CCIs Because it is not a hierarchical system, you might have people that are very important and leaders within the industry who do not have a title to back up that statement. So if you want to find the leaders in the CCIs, you really have to understand the space that you're working in and who the practitioners look up to, who they are speaking to, and who speaks on their behalf. Because often it is just a fellow artist, fellow musician who just represents artists without having an official title. And it is very important to have those people in the room brainstorming and working together when you are trying to grow the industry. So the third recommendation is that you must understand the nature of cultural and creative practitioners. This recommendation is, in my mind, the most obvious and the one that I think is the least implemented at the moment. You cannot grow the cultural and creative industries without understanding the rules and the systems at play. Cultural and creative practitioners do not need to adapt to other systems. Instead, their unique system and nature must be understood by those aiming to grow this industry. Creative and artists and creatives are often perceived, or people's interpretation is that they are chaotic, they're all over the place, they don't have any rules, they do what they like, and this is not true. There is a value system at play in the cultural and creative industries, and you have to understand it. I've just given 4 pointers here. The first is value structures are not only financial. There is an undertone within this industry of being anti-capitalist, anti-entrepreneurial, and what is meant by this is that finance is not the only value structure. There are 3 components that come into the values of the CCIs, and that is economic, social, and cultural. If you leave out social and cultural, you will lose the interests of the industry. Their integrity, their cultural honesty, and their social impact are as important as generating an income. And you have to work with all 3 of those components together. The second is, which we've spoken to quite a lot, a distributed network. If you come into the cultural and creative industries with strategies, even if they're the best strategies you could imagine, in a hierarchical approach, top down, telling people what they must do, and just informing from your ivory tower what's going to happen, you will not succeed. You have to come in within the rules of this industry, which is that we are all equal, and we all have a voice, and we all have a contribution to make. The third is entrepreneurial orientation. You will hear often in the CCIs of people being anti-capitalist and anti-entrepreneurial. What this implies is they are not pro what these words have become to mean and the value structures underlying that. If it is just about making money, they are not interested. But if it is about hustling, if it is about working together, making some income while doing this incredible project, while uplifting people, while having artistic integrity in the output, they are on board. 90% of this industry is made up of micro enterprises, and the majority of people are working for themselves. So they are entrepreneurs. They just don't use terminology because they don't agree with how it is being perceived at the moment. The last is that they are systems thinkers, trying to work in a more linear, solo thinking society. Creatives are systems thinkers. They are continually looking for the connections, wanting to work with each other, wanting to see how their work feeds into other works, feeds into other issues. They are continually finding the connections between different things that initially would seem that there is no connection. And you have to understand these components. Obviously, this is quite simplified, but you have to understand these components if you want to grow the CCIs. The fourth recommendation is applying CATWO to Johannesburg's cultural and creative industries. CATWO stands for Customers, Actors, Transformation, Worldview, Owners, in environmental constraints. Now, what I've done here is I've taken the recommendation of understanding how creatives think and the stakeholder breakdown of all the stakeholders and put it into this framework. The first is the customers. Cultural and creative practitioners are the customers that we are trying to enable and uplift. The second are the actors, those that can make this happen. That's capacity training organization, creative hubs, maker spaces, and advocating organizations. The third is transformation. The transformation needed is to start thinking in a systems thinking way, not working in silos, finding commonalities, and a deeper understanding of the CCIs. The worldview that is held by these customers is a distributed network, social, economic, and cultural value system, anti-capitalism, and anti-entrepreneurship. The owners, those that hold the power to enable, are the Municipality of Johannesburg, tertiary institutions, departments of arts and culture, and then all the other departments that go with us, including Gauteng province. The environmental constraints, very challenging environments at the moment in Johannesburg. Unemployment rates are very high, infrastructural decline, political instability, and lack of cohesive leadership across the three components. The fifth recommendation is applying the quadruple helix model. This is the second case study of what is the role of universities, and this is what it is with a bit more detail. Universities have the potential to bring together key stakeholders to start having real conversations, and that would be government, civil society, universities, and industry. It's very important to look who I've put under these categories, because in the universities, I'm not just talking about art and design departments, although they are very, very important. I'm also talking about business departments and research entities. It is not just art and design alone. They need to start speaking to the business departments because they have tools that could really benefit the growth. But the art and design department should have the understanding of how the industry works. And then, of course, research entities within the universities. And the industry is also broader than just the 6 domains. It also includes business and economics and tech industries. Tech is very important because that's a key component of development that is needed within the CCIs. So the final recommendation 6, is a strategic systemogram, trying to get a broad overview of how all of these bits fit together. So firstly, we have the objective is to grow the creative economy of Johannesburg. And I believe quite strongly that what is needed in order to achieve this is a shared vision. A shared vision is not something that everybody then has to do projects to reach that goal. It's something that's already happening. It's just acknowledging what's already there. And that to me is that Johannesburg is branding Johannesburg as a creative city. UNESCO has creative cities that you can apply for, and there's currently 3 creative cities in South Africa. But the issue is that it's siloed again. You have to choose a domain that you are applying to be a creative city for, such as music or design. The city of Johannesburg, in my opinion, is not one of the domains. It's all 6. It is a creative city across all domains. And the work has already been done. It already exists. It's just about bringing together those points and letting people know. So in a time of quite extreme challenges that the city of Johannesburg is facing, there is this positive thing that already exists that they could be shining a light on, which is Johannesburg as a creative city. This could lead to improved perceptions of the inner city, of the city at large, and the inner city, and increase or have a positive impact on tourism, both internationally and domestically. If there was more tourism, there would be more access to markets. Now, you're dealing with an industry that is predominantly made up of micro enterprises, on average earning around 500,000 Rand a year. If they were getting more people to their door, buying directly from them, their fashion products, their music, their visual arts, it would change the game completely and allow others to enter the field. The missing link is access to markets and being able to sell the products that they are making. If the city of Johannesburg was branded as a creative city, this could be happening physically, that people are going on tours and seeing everything that there is, as well as virtually by creating a website or a place of market online for the creatives of the city of Johannesburg. Another component is that a creative city would lead to more active citizenry. Johannesburg has a great deal of active citizenry. People want to get involved. They often do very exciting things within their suburbs, but they often burn out because their projects do not get the support that they hope for, and they stop. If they could be plugging in something larger, sharing their stories, sharing their highlights in a shared space with a shared vision, it could change that and grow active citizenry. Organizations like Josie My Josie, which are wonderful, using systems thinking, bringing together a variety of partners, are already trying to achieve this. But they aren't doing it under the umbrella of the city of Johannesburg being a creative city, which I think is the missing link. It does not mean infrastructural developments and all the other social work would not happen. It's just something that we can all connect to, that is a very, very positive strength that our city has. This goes from small to big. It also leads to this concept of custodians of the inner city, which was brought up and discussed quite a bit in the case study on Contrafair, that before the custodians of the inner city were large corporates, banks and large insurance companies. And as they started leaving the inner city and moving to predominantly the northern suburbs, there was this gap left behind of no custodians to the city. That gap over the years has been filled by micro business creatives and tradesmen. And a spotlight needs to be shone on them. It's not a large corporate and, they're putting in millions, but it's a lot of little people, little organizations and individuals working together to manage the city. Contrafair is a perfect example of what this means and represents, and activities that are happening in the inner city that could make us all feel proud. It's a low-hanging fruit. You've got 19 creative hubs in this inner city, all opened, majority of them opened within the last 5 years, with creatives working in these buildings. Some have four people working there, others have 150 people working there, but there are 19 in the inner city of Johannesburg, and they need to be supported. And that support goes past financial. Of course, financial is important, but it goes past. They need to be part of something bigger. They need to feel like somebody's got their back, and they need to feel like they can connect to something. Only 2 of those creative hubs, which is the Downtown Music Hub and Transvaarke at Constitution Hill, are funded by any government entity. The rest are either independent with artists or they're partnerships between artists and property developers. And the city needs to wake up to what this magic is that's happening in the inner city of Johannesburg, which is not happening in cities around the world. The next component I'll speak to is about bridges. Because you're working within a distributed network with lots of micro players, and there isn't this simplified hierarchy to understand who to speak to, it becomes very hard for the owners to figure out who to engage in order to have a bigger impact. And the actors are really, really important in this. And the actors become the bridge between the CCI practitioners and the owners. The actors have to understand the worldview held by CCI practitioners, and they also have to understand the transformation that is needed in order for the owners to do what they're trying to do and succeed. These bridges are critical within a distributed network. Creative hubs are one of those bridges that are a very easy example within the inner city of Johannesburg. The shared value system has to be the foundation of how the growth is approached. There have to be base rules and structures put in place of what is important and how we are growing this. This is not a quick exercise that the municipality can make a good logo and then the city is branded. It has to take deep thinking, systems thinking approaches to finding the connections and working together so everyone is communicated with and understands the shared vision of Johannesburg as a creative city. Johannesburg has the potential to become the creative city of South Africa and potentially of Africa. It has the potential to really highlight what culture in a contemporary context looks like within an African context, because it's already doing it. It's just that nobody has brought it all together yet in order for people not within this dynamic industry to fully understand what is capable. This demogram I could speak to, go into quite a bit of detail, but I will just leave it there. I mentioned this when I started this recording. The dissemination of this research is very, very important to me, and please reach out, please connect with me. I don't know exactly, who would want to know this information, and I'm happy to share it. It is all going to be open source, the information from my thesis. And you have three components that three stakeholders that I'm trying to engage with. The first is academic, through conferences and academic articles and the thesis. The academic, I'm hoping that scholars, people doing their honours, masters and PhD start considering doing research on the CCIs of the city of Johannesburg, of Gauteng province, so that we can have a bigger body of work that can include different views, different perspectives on the topics, but we need more for people to work with. And that's not just within CCIs. It should be a topic that is presented to business scholars or business students as well as other areas of academia. The second is cultural and creative practitioners, and I'm hoping to get to reach them and share insights with them on how the industries function and what people think within the industries, because often when you're working within a distributed network, you're working in your little bubble and you don't always realize how much your role fits into a bigger idea, and that there are just thousands of yous making this industry so dynamic and wonderful, and sometimes you forget that. So I'm hoping that some of the information from the research will share insights with practitioners about their industry that they might not have realized. And that's through my website with blogs, LinkedIn posts, Facebook posts, and hopefully, possibly workshops. The last is government investments and corporates. This will be through online engagements with stakeholders, expert contribution to reports, and hopefully expert contribution to research and policy. Contribution to the study has been theoretical contribution, practical contribution, and methodological contributions. Lastly, the limitation of this study, always more research could be done. I think it would be incredible to do research on Gauteng province and to expand exactly the same formula as what I've done in the city of Johannesburg to the city of eKurhuleni and the city of Tshwane, so that you could get a cohesive perspective and view of Gauteng province's cultural and creative industries. The second is the mapping study. It would be great to include a qualitative component where you hear more stories and understand the idea, the sense of place for practitioners in the city of Joburg, and field work to allow more practitioners to add to the map. Qualitative research, further case studies. There are so many actors that have case studies that could be done, and they offer insights for us to better understand a context or a field. Josie Majosi is one of those, the South African cultural and creative industries, Hey Hilbra, Let's Lala. There are so many case studies that could be done in the city of Johannesburg. And quantitative, to have a further reach. My research only reached a certain amount of people, I think it was just under 140, but it would be great to reach a much larger proportion of the industry. Thank you very much. You can't ask me any questions, but that was my oral defense. I've gone over, I did go into a little bit more detail than I did in my actual oral defense, trying to explain some of the components. For my oral defense, I think I took 25 minutes. You can't go much more than that. They give you a bit of leniency, but not too much. And I hope this video is useful to the two different worlds of people that might be watching. There's PhD candidates wishing you all the best in your final steps, and then for people interested in the City of Johannesburg's cultural and creative industries. Just a final note, the City of Johannesburg is a dream waiting to be recognized, and it's going to take collective efforts, collective vision to make that happen. But we need to get the strategists at the table, and we need to get people that truly understand this industry to start analyzing how we can grow within the constraints or opportunities of the structure of the cultural and creative industries of the city. Thank you so much. Cheers.